The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, U.S. Open, Millionaire Maker, DraftKings picks, and mega preview. There's $3.5 million up for grabs, so I've rounded up all the sharpest minds in the DraftKings golf space to weigh in on their top core players, busts, sleepers, ownership guesses, and most importantly, their one pick to win it all. Before we begin, I want to let you know a few things. Since there's a $1 million payday out there, I figured I'd give you some shots to get some entries into the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. And there's a bunch of different ways to get into a draw. Like, if you're watching, give the episode a like, and in the comment section, leave your DK handle along with your favorite player below $7,500. Ditto for the podcast crowd. Subscribe, rate, review, hopefully positive things, and enter the same info. That's one way. Another, head to my Twitter, @ThePME, or Facebook.com/ThePME, and share either this episode or Thursday's field breakdown with Jeff Feinberg, or both. So, on Twitter, give a retweet, not a crummy like, then reply to the tweet with your DK handle and the hashtag USOpenDK. I suggest doing it as many times as possible to get your name in the draw as many times as possible. All the stats you'll see have been powered by FantasyNational.com. Not only does FantasyNational.com have the most customizable stat engine on the planet, it has every tool you'll need if you're digging into golf. Custom model, lineup generator, event simulator, mixed condition model, ownership projections, event history, sortable date ranges, and shockingly, even more. And I'll be giving one lucky person a yearly membership this week. So, this is what you gotta do. Head to Twitter, follow @FantasyNational, and retweet the pinned tweet at the top of the profile. That's it. And even if you're already a member, you're still eligible for the free yearly membership. That's $200, so go spread the word. I'll announce the winner on Monday's show, so you have until then to get it done. Now, here's what you need to know about the U.S. Open. 156 players are in the field at Shinnecock Hills, and a scarce top 60 antis after 36 holes will remain on Long Island for the weekend. Well, if Tiger makes it through, technically, he'll still be on his yacht, not on the island, but those are semantics. Since the entire field isn't yet finalized, DraftKings will be adding golfers to the player pool Monday, June 11th. So be on the lookout for those extra names. Historically, the late adds always go overlooked. Take Cam Smith at the Masters, for example. This is the 5th time Shinnecock Hills has hosted the national championship, and first since Retief Goosen, Teef, outlasted Phil Mickelson and hoisted the cleverly named U.S. Open trophy in 2004. However, while the framework of the country's oldest course is basically the same, there have been significant changes to Shinnecock over the past 14 years. Mainly in 2012. A Ben Crenshaw and Bill Coore alteration that year saw hundreds of trees yanked from the ground and over 450 yards added in length. In 2004, it was a hair under 7,000 yards. Now, Shinnecock is the 4th longest par 70 major in history at almost 7,450 yards. That's long. Initially, the fairways were widened too, but scaled back by the USGA following last year's birdie-fested Erin Hills. The landing areas at Erin Hills measured up to 60 yards wide in some places. So, after some deliberation, Shinnecock's will average around 41 yards in width. Still, it's a far cry from the 26-yard average in 2004. This brings some of the bunkers back into play too. And without trees on the grounds, the wind could potentially cause devastation if it gets gusty. With the potential for swirling winds and the ryegrass rough being replaced by thick, knee-high fescue, this U.S. Open may resemble an Open Championship at a moment's notice. And it makes sense, since Shinnecock was the first links course in the U.S. Weather draws are going to be very important this week, especially if the soft spot opens up during the day. We're too far out right now to make any declarations, so check back on next week's show for some analysis once we have slightly better information, all right? The greens are violently contoured and comprised of POA, a putting surface rarely seen outside of California courses. And after the renovation, USGA President Mike Davis decided the areas around the green that had once been rough should now be closely mowed, meaning off-base approaches are gonna keep on rolling. However, it does allow myriad ways to recover from around the green. Think Pinehurst number 2. Since Shinnecock has been lengthened to such a degree, you're gonna need to find the players who can hit it long and straight. All facets of tee to green are gonna be important, but I'll be leaning off the tee a little more than usual, and I'll take distance over accuracy, but a combination both is ideal. Unfortunately, that's tough to find. Overall, strokes gained ball striking, the combo stat from Fantasy National of off the tee and approach, is going to be your best bet. But bombing isn't the only path to success. It's simply the one that comes with less resistance. If you're targeting the shorter accuracy hitters, just know the degree of difficulty of getting approaches with long irons to stop on these firm greens is going to be a chore. So if you veer in that direction, you best make certain those guys have capable short games so that at least they can scramble for easy pars. Easy being really relative at the US Open. Beyond that, if you're looking for some extra stats to peek at for some extra names, on a par 70, par 4 scoring will always play a major factor. And with these smaller than average greens, pairing greens in regulation with around the green makes a lot of sense. In theory, the more gers a player hits, the worse he can be scrambling. Again, in theory, because we all know that's never how it plays out.
Do you even lift, bro?
Core players, the guys you're going to be building the majority of your lineups around. First off, if it's a trap, I'm prepared to be caught in it. Paul Casey is just egregiously underpriced at $8,000. He's the 12th ranked player in the world and the 20th in DraftKings pricing. He's missed just a lone cut this season, a combined 2 cuts the past 2 years, and sits top 10 in this field in off the tee, ball striking, approach, par 4s gained, tee to green, and bogey avoidance over the last 100 rounds. And Casey, along with Sergio and Ross Fisher, are the only players in the field to sit inside the top 35 in both driving distance and fairways gained over that same stretch. He's good, he's cheap, so use him. And I really want to build around Dustin Johnson too, but it's a tad pricey to go all in on, so I'll take discount Dustin. John Rahm. Many will remember him going into a Hulk rage at last year's US Open. I remain unconcerned. You're getting the world's number 4 player at less than $10,000. That's a deal. And I'm going to have Casey on the squad. Having someone else who can consistently actually make putts should reduce my stress level. In his past 100 round, Rahm rates out top 10 in par 4s gained, driving distance, off the tee, ball striking, par 4s gained, tee to green, and top 25 in putting, bogey avoidance, and scrambling. Pretty good. But that's me. Let's turn to our cavalcade of experts on who they're building around. First up, FantasyGolfMetrics.com and DK Live's Jeff Ulrich.
For my core plays, Pat, I really want to target the 7K range personally. I think it's going to be really important to nail those values this week. And the first player I want to target from that range is Louis Oosthuizen at 7,800. His iron play has really improved over his last 2 events. Very, very positive strokes gained in that category. Hit 16 of 18 greens in his final round at the Memorial, shot a 65 there to end the tournament. So he's trending really well in the right direction. Louis pretty accurate off the tee considering how far he hits it. He's also really good around the greens this year. First in scrambling on tour. He's got an underrated US Open record too. Second at Chambers Bay, 23rd over the last 2 years. So I like Louis. I think he's got a lot of upside. Kind of a dark horse winner for me too. And then the second player I want to target in the 7K range is Kyle Stanley. I think he's just too cheap at 7,200. He really is the prototypical US Open player. He's 4th in driving accuracy, 4th in greens in regulation. And it's kind of a shame he hasn't played this event since 2013. I think he could be in for a big week. Had a really good run up. Obviously the playoff loss Memorial, but 7,200. Give me all the Kyle Stanley this week. He's definitely my second core play.
Rick Gaiman from DFS On Demand and the Rick Run Good YouTube channel.
There's a few players in this field who will be the starting point for my lineups. The first being defending champion Brooks Koepka, who has been excellent at US Opens in his career. He's finished no worse than 18th in any of his previous 4 US Open trips, including a win last year and a 4th place finish. He's cruising in an excellent form with a 2nd place at the Fort Worth Invitational and an 11th back at the Players Championship. Priced at only $9,000, Koepka is going to be a core member of my lineups. It also feels like we're overlooking Tommy Fleetwood, only $8,100, and maybe it's because he hasn't played much on the PGA Tour recently. His notable starts over here include a 7th place at the Players Championship and a 17th at the Masters. He's made the cut in both of his career US Open starts, including a 4th place last year. He enters this week as 7th best in the field in strokes gained off the tee, and with no major concerns about Fleetwood, he'll be a strong play for me.
Co-host of the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast and PowerHour.com, Kenny Kim.
My 2 core players for the US Open are Justin Thomas at $11,000 and Justin Rose at $9,900. JT is one of the longest guys off the tee. His iron game has been fire all year, and surprisingly, he's second in the field in bogey avoidance during the last 50 rounds. Also, his 2 wins this season have come on the 2 most difficult courses on tour this year, the Honda Classic and the CJ Cup. It's going to be a tough test at Shinnecock, and those 2 wins prove he's up for the challenge. Rose is quite possibly having the best year of his career. In the last 50 rounds, he's inside the top 10 in the field in strokes gained approach, strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained par 4, DraftKings points, birdies are better gained, strokes gained around the green, and bogey avoidance. He's not short off the tee, and once again, the iron game is strong. The biggest factor in his success has been his improved putting, as he ranks 20th in the field in strokes gained putting over the last 50 rounds. I think with that 3-headed monster, he has a great chance at his 2nd U.S. Open title.
Do you even lift, bro?
All right, let's get into the entire field, starting with the players $9,000 and above, the favorites, at least according to Vegas. And Vegas, very rarely wrong. So the winner probably going to come from this section, and you're probably going to need the winner if you're going to win $1 million in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. Joining me to break down the entire field from fanvice.com, it is Ben Rasa. From dailyroto.com, it is Mike Leone. Fellas, what is going on?
Not much. Ready for another major breakdown here.
I like that you dressed up again here, Mike.
Yeah, you know, I went with the suit and tie. This, you can't really see my whole shirt. It's the "What Would Sashi Do" shirt. So I'm trying to channel my inner analytics and game theory and turn things around. I've had a worse golf season than last year, so we're going to turn it around like the Browns are on the upswing. I'm on the upswing for this show.
Yeah, see, I appreciate it too, because when everything's going on, they see you 2 scrubs and they see me in a shirt and tie. They're like, that guy, despite knowing the least and doing the worst at all of this, they'll think that I'm the one, Rasa.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. It's all about creating that buffer.
All right, so we need to get your creds out of the way so people actually know to listen to you guys. Raza, tell us about your season so far, and especially in terms of the majors in winning the DraftKings bucks.
Yeah, so far so good. I was on the Masters show, got the Pat Mayo bump, was able to take down the old Thunderdome thanks to Patrick Reed. The Players was going really well, and then Tiger's water ball on 17 was a disaster, but so far so good. I'm excited for this one, honestly. I like this a little better than the Masters, not gonna lie, so I'm looking forward to see how these guys deal with Shinnecock.
Well, it's going to be interesting because at the Masters, you need to have basically 4 guys inside the top 10 because so many people make the cut. This is a much larger field. 156 players, only top 60 in ties, so fewer players actually make it than usual. So you're going to get 5 of 6s that do pretty well. You won't win with a 5 of 6, but you can still cash pretty well if you have high-end guys with a 5 of 6. Leone, when you came second at the Masters during the Millionaire Maker last year, does it seem like if you came like 8th now, it'd be kind of crummy?
I'd like to say that, but I mean, I'll take any cashes. You know, the money still comes in the same.
All right, let's get to the top of the board. We got Dustin Johnson at 10-7, Rory at at 11-7, Rory at 11-5. Justin Thomas. There's so many Dustins and Justins and Jasons and Jordans. There's a lot of J's here at the top. Justin Thomas, 11K on the dot. Jordan Spieth, 10-8. Jason Day, 10-5. Ricky Fowler, 10-2. Then you got Rose, Rahm, Tiger, and Brooks in the $9,000 area. Before we get to the very top and talk about Dustin Johnson, I think that the name that's going to confuse the most people and have the most buzz on either way of it is going to be Jordan Spieth. Comes in with at least tee to green, great form, and then all of a sudden his tee to green game went away at Memorial, and everyone was just kind of banking on that, be like, oh, the putter's going to flip, the putter's going to flip. But now if the tee to green game's not there, it feels like more people are going to be out. Raza, is Jordan Spieth going to be the lowest owned of the guys above $10,000?
I think so. This finally did it at Memorial. People have been, the putter's going to come around, and then he was just bad with the irons. Before the pricing came out, I actually said to both you guys, we're going to have to deal with 9K Jordan Spieth. It's going to be popular again. 10-8 Jordan Spieth is not going to be popular. That kind of intrigues me solely for that reason. It kind of feels like when he gets it right, it's going to come back in a big way. We've seen him, at the Masters, same story. Wasn't great for him, and then boom, he was right there at the end. So give me, maybe sub 10%. Obviously, it's very early right now, but sub 10% Jordan Spieth. intriguing for tournaments.
Leone, do you think that it's going to happen that everyone sort of talks themselves into Spieth because, hey, he's going to come in at sub 10%, that everyone just ends up owning Jordan Spieth like they always do?
I think maybe if he was priced a little bit lower, you could still make the argument that he'd be sub 10%, and then people might flock to him. But he's in this weird pricing spectrum where there's a lot of good values in the 9K range that you can drop down to that will help you with balanced builds. Or if you're going to make the non-balanced builds and go top heavy, I think people are going to gravitate towards DJ, towards Rory. So I don't think this is the guy that we think's going to be low owned that ends up chalk because of, game theory reasons. I think he's going to end up low owned, and I'm not even sure what I want to do with it. Usually I like to play the variance of things and take these type of stances, but just the way he's played, you mentioned the 2 degree game going, Data Golf, who powers our projections, they have the 40 round shot strokes gained moving average on his putting per round. And it's just crazy to look at it over the last 5 years. It's at basically the lowest point of his entire career.
What are you going to be targeting most when it comes to stats with all of this? Because I'm leaning more, like, obviously tee to green is going to be huge, par 4 scoring is going to be huge, but like ball striking. But I'm going to put more of an emphasis on off the tee, especially with some of these longer hitters at a par 70, 450 yards. Like, it's going to be really tough for some of these shorter hitters, unless it plays like -2 is the winning score. It's just going to be hard for them to generate birdie opportunities.
Yeah, par adjusted distance here has to be one of the longest courses out there. I mean, the one that they're playing this week, the St. Jude, is one of the longer courses. I think that's like in the 7,200 yards of par 70, and it's one of the longer courses par adjusted. So I'm definitely looking at tee to green with an emphasis on driving distance. I think if you're looking strokes gained off the tee, you do have to be careful that that's a catch-all metric, so it doesn't distinguish between the guys I like Francesco Molinari, who's accurate off the tee but doesn't have the distance. He's still going to have good strokes gained off the tee versus someone like DJ, obviously, who's super long off the tee. So just be careful if you're looking only at strokes gained off the tee. You might want to parse it down a bit further and look at the guys that are gaining their strokes off the tee via distance.
Yeah, so in my Fantasy National custom model, basically what I did is, because driving distances, I'm going to lean driving distance over accuracy, but I do think that you need to have a modicum of accuracy here, because if you start going off the fairway, you're going to be absolutely screwed. So I think that looking at some, if you're going to have like a middle tier hitter that's not really high in driving distance, if they do hit a lot of fairways and rank really highly and off the tee, I think that's going to help. Raza, how are you splitting this down and what you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm with you. You're going to have to be long because this thing is a monster, but they widen the fairways, but you still can't be spraying. If you're spraying bad, you're dead. So it's kind of a total driving. I want the distance, but you're going to need some accuracy. So those guys, I mean, the guys who come to mind, obviously, the DJs, the Roms of the world, those guys that just have immense power, but they're also pretty good at keeping it out of the big stuff.
All right, let's talk DJ then. DJ is the favorite. He's the most expensive player. He's won a U.S. Open. He's come second at a U.S. Open. Feinberg even said on the show yesterday that it seems like U.S. Opens are kind of set up for players with the DJ skill set. Bombers who can hit it pretty accurately, and not say that DJ is the most accurate guy on tour, but he can hit it pretty long, pretty straight, and it just gives those types of players such an advantage. Ben, are you just going to start with Dustin Johnson and work your way down, or is he too expensive?
It's going to be a little of both. I don't mind him. Usually, I mean, I'm a Rory guy. I love Rory. And I have no problem with Rory, but I do think DJ's in a good spot. Obviously, U.S. Open, they change venues, but I think this plays kind of more like 2016 than Aaron Hills. Obviously, DJ won that year. I think his distance is going to come into play. He's playing this week. I think he's ready. It's soft enough, the majors always give you so many quality players that you can plug in a guy, he's around 12K and have plenty of room to take 5 other really good golfers. There's plenty of other guys if we'll get down when we go a little more balanced. But for the very, very top, out of the top 3 guys, normally I would say Rory, but actually Dustin Johnson for me is my favorite of the 3.
Do you have a preference of the top 3 guys, Mike?
I'm on DJ as well. The Data Golf Who powers our projections, they've had him as the clear number 1 guy all season long, and that hasn't changed. And basically we have him and then a little bit of a gap and then a whole cluster of guys that really there's not a huge delineation between. So with the distance DJ offers, and I wonder too if the ownership isn't too high, because even though you do get the looser pricing in the major fields, it doesn't feel as, nearly as loose as it was for the Masters. And some of these expensive guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the top end of the pricing is even a little bit higher than it was for the Masters. So I think you're going to get good ownership on him as well. Not like low own, but he's not going to be chalk by any means.
All right, so you have Rory and Justin Thomas right below him when it comes to getting off of DJ. Which one do you think is going to come in as A, the better play, Mike, and B, probably the lower own? Because I just have a feeling that people are going to overlook Rory.
I think that Rory's going to be higher owned than Justin Thomas. And I think as a result, with Thomas being a bit cheaper and projecting a little less ownership, I'd rather play him than Rory is my first look.
Yeah, I think that I like Justin Thomas more than Rory as well, which is funny because I have an outright bet from like December on Rory to win this, parlayed up to 40-1. So I wouldn't be, hating Rory winning, but I'm kind of with you. I like DJ more than these three, but I think Justin Thomas has to be closer to Dustin Johnson than Rory is right now. I mean, he is the #1 player in the world. Would you agree, Ben?
It's hard to argue against Justin Thomas because he is playing the best. He likes POA, but no, I don't agree. I would rather have Rory. I think Rory comes in lesser owned. I expect this to play difficult, and the only thing I can, like I said, if I go to stats, it's very hard to justify it. But I will say that Justin Thomas trying to grind it out, I think there could be some problems. Now, in a couple minutes, we'll talk about Rahm, and I'm going to contradict myself. But for me, Justin Thomas is third out of the big three.
Well, how hard do you think this course gets? Because Justin Thomas just won at the most difficult track on tour last season at the PGA Championship.
Yeah, that's true. And he was amazing. And Aaron Hills is going to be different, but I remember that absurd round from him. I do think it's going to play tough. It's going to be long. If the wind is up, scrambling is going to be massive. They shaved the greens, and they widened the fairways, then they shrunk them to an extent. They're still pretty wide. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Oh, I got the numbers for you.
Aaron
Hills, in terms of fairway width, were 60 yards in length. So what they did is they kind of went out to like 50 at Shinnecock Hills from the average of 26 in width that they played in 2004. Then Mike Davis said, you know what, we don't want the winning score to be -16. So they shrunk them back down to around 41 yards in length. So it's somewhere in between 2004 and Aaron Hills.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Obviously, with the added length, it's going to force guys. You can't really be conservative off these tees, especially if it's windy. And yeah, again, it's tough. You look at, Justin Thomas, he hasn't finished worse than like 20th. It feels like in 6 months. That's hard to argue with, but I will still roll with Rory. I'm always a Rory fan.
Okay, so you kind of hit on the key thing. It depends on what the weather's going to do. How much do you think you're going to have to wait to build your lineups this week and then potentially T-stack if there's an opportunity?
Yeah, that is something I'm definitely going to explore. Obviously on the island, if the wind could change it, this could resemble the Open Championship over in Europe, I think, where there's always massive tee time splits. This is a good week to correlate on tee times, and you might just get guys who get lucky and get, the group together. They get softer, easier conditions, and they can take advantage of those first 2 days.
Yeah, we saw that with Phil Stenson, JB Holmes, Charles Schwartzel 2 years ago at the Open Championship, that if you just stack that wave, you won all the monies that week. So on Wednesday's show, when I do the live chat, I'll have more conclusive picks. Like today, we're just kind of going over who do we like right now, but things can change over the course of the next 5 days, whether it's ownership stuff, whether it's tee time draws, that sort of thing. I don't want to overemphasize it, but if there is a clear stacking opportunity here, Mike, are you going to take advantage?
Absolutely. I know 2 years ago, we had a big week at Daily Roto. I remember I was kicking myself because we had played Stenson like week in and week out. And this is when in New York, it was going on that you couldn't play in New York. So I had been playing in Charlotte. I'd come back to New York and you couldn't play yet. So I got all these bad Stenson weeks. And then everybody in the DR group won money on Stenson except for me because I couldn't play that week. And painful memories. But you mentioned, are you going to wait to build? Of course, I'm not going to wait to build because it's just too much fun fiddling around with rosters. But I would warn against getting too attached to certain builds because sometimes what happens is you build early and all of a sudden you feel like you have to play this lineup. And then the weather comes out and it doesn't line up with what you think. And then you have a tough time taking in that information in an unbiased manner. Or sometimes what happens to me, like on NFL Sundays, I just start making more teams and adding on to the entry fees so that I can play the weather stacks and play the lineups I got attached to. So just be careful there.
So let's say we end up doing stack. Let's say there's a noticeable difference between the AM and the PM wave on day one, and then day two, it's all the same. So you're like, hey, I want to take these early morning guys. They're going to play in the better conditions. Are you going to play enough lineups that you would still play the inverse of that, like 5%, just to see, because you know that everyone's going to stack the AM wave? Would you then take some of the PM wave and just go all PM just to kind of give yourself some outs and leverage on the field?
If you're mass multi-entering, I think that's a really good decision, just because there is a certain level of unpredictability to it. I think it was the tournament 2 weeks ago. There was like a 3-shot difference in the waves, and there wasn't really an obvious explanation for why that had happened. And sometimes, the wind shifts on a dime, or just for whatever reason, the way the greens are playing and the way they're receiving, you could see it not go the way that we think, especially if it's just like a tiny edge that everybody's playing. I do think that's a smart contrarian play if you're making, if you're grinding 50 plus lineups and you want to do 5 to 10%. But if I'm playing, 3 maxes or even 10 lineups, I'm probably not going to go to the extent to build, an intentionally contrarian stack of the night slate. I probably won't go that far in a limited amount of lineups.
All right, the final two guys in the $10,000 range, Jason Day and Ricky Fowler. It's funny, I'm not big on Jason Day at all here. I know that he has 2 wins this year. I know he has another second place finish. He actually has 4 top 5s in 7 starts. It's pretty good, but it's all been short game and it's all been putter. Like, his approaches aren't good. They're like 90th in this field when you compare them in. Some guys don't even have stats. So that's like bottom 15% in terms of his strokes gained approach, and that's short term. Even when you look long term, it's exactly the same. He does have the driving distance and he does play well in really strong fields, but I just look at it and be like, you know what? I want to bank on the tee to green guy, not the putting guy. Ben, I'm all out fading Jason Day. I'm ready for it to kill me. Am I wrong on this?
I hope not, because right now I'm possibly all out fading Jason Day. I don't like him either. You just touched upon it. It's incredible. I mean, first and foremost, that he just wasn't missing inside 10 feet, but that's just unsustainable to the point where we saw last week. It wasn't like he was bad on the greens, but he's so poor with the irons right now. He needs to gain like 5-6 strokes on the greens just to have a chance, and that's just something I'm not going to bank on week in, week out. We've talked, everyone talks about how putting comes and goes. Tee to green is just more reliable. So I'll take, there's so many quality golfers in this field, obviously, with it being a major. He's just one right now I don't have room for.
All right, so what about Ricky Fowler then? When we drop down to him, he's on that same tier as Jason Day. I don't know what to do with him, and his game hasn't really looked all that good either. Ben, would you take Fowler over Day, or would you avoid them both? Because I haven't made a decision on Ricky yet, but I'm leaning fade.
I definitely take him over Day. I like Ricky. He's another one of my favorites. Hasn't been great this year. He really hasn't. But again, if this play's tough, scrambling, I do like, it's more of a long-term approach with him. But I still think that suits his game. The putting hasn't been what it was. It can return. He was never that great with the irons, but I think he can handle this course. I think he can grind it out if it is tough conditions. I'm going to have some Ricky exposure. How much? It's going to depend on obviously a lot of factors, ownership. But right now, I do see myself certainly approaching being overweight if he's not outrageously owned, which I don't think he would be.
Mike, what do you say about Jason Day and Mr. Ricky Fowler? Are you going to be in or out? Because it seems like Day is going to be one of the lesser-owned guys from the top end.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be in on Day. I definitely understand the points you guys are making, but last time I was fully fading Day, expecting that putting to regress. He just went on this insane run. That was the year he won the PGA championship. And I'm not saying that it's going to continue, but I do think he has this volatile high-end variance game where if he's okay with his irons and the putting game's on, like that is enough to get him to where he needs to be this week. And it can go the other way, but I think because the ownership's going to be a bit lower on him, that I'm willing to embrace that variance because I know he's got that high-end upside. Whereas Fowler, I'm just doubting that high-end upside comes to fruition more often than it does for Day. So I'm probably out on Fowler and in on Day.
All right, so if I'm, let's say, building 20 lineups for the Millionaire Maker, realistically, how many of the guys above $10,000 should I have in my core? 2, 3?
I think that a lot of this comes down to where the ownership percentages are going to lie, but I think you want 2 to 3 guys up here, maybe just 2 if you're talking core, maybe 2 guys and then maybe like a third guy that you sprinkle in if you want to diversify off one of the top. But for me, like I think DJ is the guy I'll own the most up here, and then maybe some JT someday. Those are the 3 that I'm looking at most.
Okay, so for me, if I'm only going to play 2 guys up in this level, for me, it's going to be Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas. I might work in a third guy to help build around and potentially differentiate. I'll talk about that on Tuesday's show with your boy Drewby and see who's coming at the low ownership. If it turns out to be Jordan Spieth, screw it. Let's go with Jordan Spieth as the outlier guy that I'll have 15% of. Ben, who are the 2 guys that you would play above this level?
It would be DJ and Jordan Spieth for me. Ricky would probably be the third, only because he's hovering right around 10K, and I think I could probably pair him up with a couple other, of the better players. But if I was only picking 2, I'd go right to the top with DJ, and then I'm gonna roll the dice with Spieth. I already know that's gonna happen.
All right, so in the $9,000 level, like, you're getting a discount on these guys, and they're not all that much worse, I don't think, at least in terms of skill set. So you got Justin Rose, you got John Rahm, you got Tiger at 92, and then Brooks at 9,000. I think that Brooks is setting up to be, realistically, him and Rose, 2 of the most popular plays on the board. Just because of price, you compare him with one of the very top guys, but you kind of spoiled where I was going with this, Ben, and I think John Rahm's going to win. So he's basically Dustin, but you're getting a $2,000 discount. All
right, you and me, we're a lot of times on these shows we're on polar opposites, but I am with you. I really like John Rahm this week, which I sound like an idiot because I was just talking about how JT might get into trouble. John Rahm really might get into trouble. He's a wild man, as we all know. He gets a little angry on the course, but talk about someone who's just a monster. He can handle it. He's trending there. He was there at the Masters 2 years ago. I mean, that was basically his not coming out party, but he was fine at the U.S. Open. Yeah, he was bad last year, but you're getting a nice discount in terms of price that allows you to do a lot of things. And he's sandwiched between a lot of polarizing guys. Rose is playing great. I have no problem with him. Brooks right now, I know it's very early when we're filming this, but he's tearing it up this week. That can only bump his ownership even more. I see those guys sucking a ton of ownership, and it makes Rahm really appealing for me.
Mike, you going to have any Tiger?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have some Tiger. I think he's played really well. I've come full circle on Tiger when we talked about this a little bit before, where when he first started getting back to, some semblance of his old self, I felt like the market was way overreacting and we didn't have a whole lot of data to know for sure if it was happening. And as we get more data, I'm more convinced that he's somewhat back. But the market, whether it was just this early hype that they're not on or whatever, seems to have cooled on him somewhat. I mean, to the point where we were talking about him as mega chalk for a few tournaments there. I think he'll be owned, but just given all the names around him and whatnot, I think he's in this sweet spot where ownership won't get carried away, but the price tag's really nice. I do have to say I'm in on Rahm with you guys, though. You do have some questions about him grinding a tough course and his temperament, but I think you put that narrative stuff aside, and he's just an absolute bomber. And on a course where, finish points are going to matter a lot more than at the Masters, for example, because it's going to be a much tougher course. You're not going to see as many birdies. I do think Rahm's one of those guys that can have a little bit more variance in terms of birdies, bogeys, and rack up some DK scoring points and give an edge on the field there.
Yeah, one of the premier par 4 scorers on tour, too. I know the par 4s are going to be far more difficult this week, but he seems to handle those pretty well. Plus, one of the advantages that you have when you're a bomber here is that if you do miss the fairway, you're basically wedge in on a lot of these holes. You're not like if Kevin Kisner misses the fairway, he basically has to chip out, then hit a 3-iron to try to save par. Rahm actually affords the ability to help himself in the scrambling department, even if he misses the green in regulation, just because he's going to be so much closer to the hole off the tee. I think that goes a long way. But it's funny because I keep hearing this narrative about like, oh, remember John Rahm last year when he was yelling at himself and throwing clubs at the U.S. Open? Well, as it turned out, he barely missed the cut, but everyone's still picking DJ to win. He missed the cut last year too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that even though I mentioned it does get carried away a little bit, like I consider it, but if he was going to be mega chalk, that might be something that I point to and say, this could go wrong. There's some uncertainty in the data. We don't know where this is going to go, but he's not going to be mega chalk. If anything, he's going to be lower owned than the guys in this group. And at that point, I'm throwing away this sort of narrative information here. And it is an interesting tier. Brooks right now is playing really, really well the week prior to the U.S. Open. So I think if there was any thought that he might come in low owned, that's gone out the window with the recent performances and obviously the win last year and being priced at the very bottom of this 9K plus tier.
Ben, Brooks, like I mentioned, Brooks and Rose are shaping up to be two of the higher owned guys. So what do we do with them? Can you commit to both of them? Do you try to avoid the ownership by building a little bit differently? And hey, you know what I'm starting with? Rose and Brooks, and not taking DJ and Brooks or Fowler and Brooks or anything like that, because I think that these two are going to be the highest owned of anyone we've talked about so far.
Yeah, if you want to play those guys, which obviously the form makes sense, there's a lot of reasons to want to. You're going to have to find, as we work down, different spots to differentiate. You can't just take the chalk in the mid-range with them. There's going to be too many people that do that. So I don't mind playing them. I like Rose a little more than Brooks just in a vacuum, but you can make it work. You just have to be aware that you're going to have to find another spot on your roster to kind of change it up.
Yeah, so I like Rose more than I like Brooks too, and if Brooks does have this performance in Memphis and being the defending champion, I think that he might actually elevate above Justin Rose in this sense. But I think that there's something with Justin Rose that people play him at when the Millionaire Maker first started getting introduced like 3-4 years ago, whenever it was. Justin Rose was the guy that no one played from the top end who was super high price. Now at every single major, he's basically the chalk.
He's just one of those guys. I mean, right now, you're right. He's been trending upward, and just the recent form is so appealing. You just look the way he's doing it, tee to green. It just seems so sustainable. I think a lot of people think that he's not due, but that is kind of a bias. I feel like people fall into, me included, that, he's trending. He's been right there. He lost to Sergio in the playoff Masters. It's just a matter of time before he gets another one. It's just, man, when you have so many good golfers, concentrated ownership makes the pivot so appealing because these guys are all world-class players. It's not a matter of talent up there.
Yeah, so I objectively like Rahm the best just because I like the upside that he presents, and I'm probably going to get him at half the ownership of these other two guys. So, Mike, are we just all on Team Rahm here?
Yeah, I think we're all on Team Rahm, and to Ben's point about the appealing pivots when you get so many good golfers bunched in the same area. We've got Dustin Johnson early on with like a 55% chance at a top 20. Once you move past him, we've got like 8 guys between like a 42% chance and a 46% chance of making the top 20. Of course, you're going to want to layer in some recent form stuff, some course fit stuff on top of that to help differentiate guys. But the fact is, these guys, their odds of placing in the top 20 are all really, really close to one another. And at that point, it makes sense to simply almost put your blinders on with the names and just pick based off of ownership.
All right, we'll drop down into the $8,000 area just here in a second. But first, I want to talk about the guys that you should probably fade at the top end. Here's some high-end busts. Since this is golf, you can basically make a case for or against any player, especially the elite. You can't play everybody. Tough choices must be made. When you look at the most expensive players, Jason Day just doesn't cut it for me. Sure, he has 2 wins and 4 top 5s and 7 2018 starts, which I hear is quite good, but a lot of that's been his butter, and that's just tough to bank on in a major. I'd rather push my chips in on consistent ball strikers for this price. And Day just doesn't stack up to the others in this range, both short and long term. Over his past 24 rounds, he's 59th in the field in ball striking and 90th in approaches. Yes, the short game has been incredible, but it's going to be tougher to escape trouble this week than almost any other this year. I'm now fully prepared for this to come back and haunt me. But, Kenny Kim, who are you fading at the top?
My high price fade is Jordan Spieth at $10,800. His horrendous putting seems to have affected other parts of his game. In his last 4 events, he has close to 40 bogeys or worse. At the Memorial, it looked like he was going for shots that were borderline impossible because he knows how poorly he's been on the greens, and that led to his missed cut. When he makes a putt now, it's more relief on his face than celebration. He used to have a swagger on the course, maybe even a little bit of arrogance, but that is now long gone. It doesn't even look like he's having fun out there anymore.
Rick?
There is one guy at the top of the salary range that has me worried, and it's Ricky Fowler, who just has not been sharp enough for me this year. He ranks 35th in the field in strokes gained off the tee, and his normally solid putter has lost him strokes to the field in 20 of his last 37 rounds. He's been a boomer bust type player in his US Open career in 9 starts, and this week feels like another bust.
Jeff, hit me with a fade.
My high-end bust call of the week, Pat, is going to be Jon Rahm at 9,500. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of getting sick of watching Jon Rahm implode at some of these major events. Bad finish at the Players. I know he's been taking advantage of some of these softer courses like the Career Builder and the Spanish Open, but this is Shinnecock Hills. This is going to be really, really tough, and I just do not like paying up 9,500 for Jon Rahm. Yeah, he's got the length off the tee to compete here, but his iron play has been inconsistent, been covering it up with good putting at Colonial, but I just do not want to pay this price for him, so I'm going to make him my high-end bust call of the week.
We're back with Ben and Mike talking about the $8,000 level down to $7,500 at the very top of the scaling. We got Hideki Matsuyama, $8,900. Then it goes into Stenson, Sergio, Phil, Patrick Reed, the Masters champion, Brennan Grace, Bryson DeChambeau, Bubba Watson, Tommy Fleetwood, and Paul Casey. That's your $8,000 level. Mike, are there any immediate scratch-offs of this list before we start breaking it down? Because I am not playing Bubba Watson.
Yeah, I find Bubba conversation really interesting because at the Masters, he was mega chalk in a looser pricing field with more alternatives at a higher price tag. And this week, I think he's not going to be very owned at all. And it's just interesting the dynamic that has and how much recent performance kind of
I don't even think that it's recent performance. The key on Bubba is play Bubba at courses where Bubba likes. And like, he hates this tournament. He hates the Open Championship. And maybe he has a few outliers over the past like 15 years. But generally speaking, he sucks at US Opens.
All right. But yeah, I mean, I think of this group, he's one of the scratch offs for cash games, certainly. I do think if he comes in with a really low number in tournaments with his distance, I'm still going to take a chance. And then I know this guy won Ben a whole bunch of money at the Masters, but I'm out on Patrick Reed.
Oh, did you say no to Patrick Reed? Still playing surprisingly well, tee to green coming in. And if this does turn into like a scrambling contest or a par 4 scoring contest, Patrick Reed's weirdly one of the best, most rounded players in this range. So Ben, who are your cross-offs?
Yeah, Bubba crossed him off for me. Not a Bubba guy. Patrick Reed, I'm closer to crossing him off, but he fits in specific lineups. I like to correlate lineups, like you just said. Say it becomes a scramble fest, I'll use him. Spieth comes to mind with certain guys that also kind of fit that skill set in the hope that maybe that's how it plays. But I'm not overall too big on him. And then I don't want to say I'm crossing this guy off, but Sergio's recent form is pretty alarming. You know, he's one of the guys that comes to mind. You think, man, I want a guy who can hit it far, pretty good, you know, keeps it in the fairway as well, total driver of the ball. But my God, it's hard to really back him right now. So I think he's closer to the back of the list in the 8,000 range.
In the past 100 rounds, there are only 3 players in the field who actually rate out top 35 in this field in both driving distance and driving accuracy. And those 3 players are Sergio Garcia, Ross Fisher, and Paul Casey. Does that sway you at all with Sergio, or is the form just too bad?
I'm still taking in that Ross Fisher. I thought Rahm would have been on there. I mean, that's kind of what I think about in the long-term form. I just don't know. He's coming in really cold. Now, that's going to temper ownership. That does add to the appeal in a giant field tournament like the Millie. But, man, you're giving up there's Hideki, there's Stenson. There's a lot of guys here who are just playing better and also world-class players.
Mike, you in and out on Sergio?
I'm out on Sergio. I actually I wish I would have set him over Reed because I think I'm out on Sergio more than I am Reed. We've got him over the past 2 months, 84th in the data golf adjusted strokes gained metric. We've got him 63rd over the last 6 months. So, I mean, the recent form's really bad, especially when you compare it to the guys around him. So, Sergio came through for me with the Masters last year, but I think I'm out on him. And I think because he's 8,700 in this mid-tier price range, that he's still going to carry ownership. I don't think you're going to get him super low. So I'm not in on Sergio this week.
All right, let's play a game. There are 2 guys I love in this $8,000 range, and I'm going to be massively overweight on 2 of them. And we'll throw it out to you. Mike, who do you think those two guys are?
I think you're in love with Bryson.
And
I was going to say Bryson too.
I was going to say there's two guys, though. So who are the two?
So, well, I feel like Casey's too chalk of an answer because he should be in everyone's cash game lineup this week. But
I think I got the other one. It's got to be your boy.
I don't know who the other
Oh my God,
one is.
it's a fucking yes or no question. Just pick two guys.
Tommy Fleetwood. Is it Tommy Fleetwood?
It's
Casey. Casey and Bryson.
I'll say.
Okay, you got them both. It's Casey.
Somehow.
It's Casey and Fleetwood. There's no Bryson here.
Oh.
We each got one then, because I thought
Together
Bryson.
we did it.
Paul Casey is the most underpriced player in this field. Like, it's kind of, and I'm not usually a Paul Casey guy, but like, if it's a trap, I'll take the trap. Like, let's go here with Paul Casey. Like, what does he do so poorly besides putting, which we can make a case for a lot of guys much higher priced than him that they can't putt either. But why is he $8,000?
Yeah, there's no reason.
No idea. It's very confusing, especially because, like, for Masters pricing, when it seems it's super loose on the hole, I could see where he could get in there. But the way this pricing is this week, it's loose, but it's not crazy loose, and that makes Casey stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off. He pulled out with I think it was a back. I'm not worried about that though, to be honest. And like Mike said, cash games, just plug him in and work down to the other five, and tournaments still. I'm certainly going to have Casey exposure.
Yeah, I know Fleetwood hasn't been playing as well recently, but I just think tee to green, he's a better putter than Paul Casey is, although he is not a great putter. But I just see him getting around here. And if it gets windy, like, I like Tommy in the wind.
Yeah,
I mean, link style course. I'm in on Tommy, and I wonder too if people get like too gung ho over distance. If Fleetwood's a name that gets overlooked.
I mean, it's not like he's short off the tee though, man.
No, I was going to say, I thought when you were saying there was three guys, he was I would have said Rahm. If you told me to guess that, I would have said Rahm. I would have said Fleetwood as well. And as a guy who kind of hits it long enough and accurate, he's a good driver of the ball. He's not certainly in that class of the real bombers, but he's no Molinari. So yeah, I think he's got plenty of length to handle a course like this.
All right, so the name that you guys did throw at me right away, Bryson DeChambeau, the guy that I played every single week this season, then forgot to bet him at Memorial because I was on vacation and didn't do the research that I should have, and boom, he wins because that's what happens to me. But Bryson coming in here, coming off a win on a big stage against a good field. My model, he rates out third. He's always going to rate out really well in models. He comes in with great form. I think I might completely fade Bryson here, Mike.
I'm throwing up my arms. I really am struggling with this one. He's one of those guys that our model has a tough time with. And it's this situation where I know our projections on him are too low and I need to manually bump him up. But at the same time, because there's so much pub around him, so much hype, that even if you manually bump him up, it seems like the right fade based on what the market's doing. So I'm really torn on this one. I'll throw it to Ben because I'm not sure yet what I'm doing with
well, Ben, I think this comes down to, and I think this is where people say that we overanalyze ownership percentages, and to a degree that's probably true from a lot of the times, but I think this is one where ownership can really dictate unless you think Bryson's going to win, then play him because you're going to need the winner. But if it comes down to like Casey's going to be chalky and Phil's going to be chalky and Bryson's going to be chalky and Stenson's going to be chalky, like if Bryson's going to be the highest owned of these guys, I want to play Casey more than I want to play him. That would just cross him off my list. I'll go to Tommy Fleetwood. I'll go to Brendan Grace. I think that they all have about the same chance of doing well.
Absolutely. I mean, if Bryson's up there with the chalk of the 8,000 range, it's going to be hard to justify. I'm, same thing at FanVice. Andrew Barron, my partner in crime, he does the projections, and he's a tough guy to really project. We manually bump him as well. You kind of have to because he doesn't fit. It's hard to gauge how good he really is. I know I struggle with that. I will play him if it looks like he's going to kind of fall in line with, middling ownership. I like him. But man, if I have to pivot to Grace, I'm comfortable doing that. Pat, you kind of just said it. These are all, again, it's a major. They're really good players. I don't think that Bryson stands out at all from a talent level against these guys. So if his ownership is up there towards the top, I have no problem kind of, I'll have some exposure, but I could come in underweight and then maybe get some leverage spots with guys like Grace.
All right, yeah. See, I like Brendan Grace here too, but I want to see the weather forecast first, or see how tough this course is playing, because the windier it is, the tougher it is, Mike, the better this is going to be for Brendan Grace, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm in on Brendan Grace. I seem to always talk myself into Grace as the GPP pivot play, and hasn't worked a whole ton this year, but I think he has the requisite upside here. And just bringing back to the conversation about ownership, and like if we pay too much attention to it, I think if you've got a guy who you're unsure the skill set, if he's good enough for your cash game, but you want to play him in GPP because you think he has, the requisite variance and upside, but he's going to be high owned, like kind of like you have to take that 10,000 foot view. What are you really doing? What are you really trying to accomplish if you're forcing yourself to play a guy that's high owned? So before I think about Bryson, I'm probably on the fade, and you can pivot to Grace. I don't think Phil will be that chalky either. And I'm generally a Phil guy, so I don't know how you guys feel about him.
Yeah, I'm not going to be playing Phil because I never play Phil, but he was second place here in 2004. So it's a lot like Tiger. This is where it's not as short as it was back then, that if you have to put the driver in his hand on almost every single hole, I mean, maybe he doesn't need to do that. If that's not the case, then Phil's going to have a much better chance. But Tiger and Phil, you put the driver in their hand, they're going to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder how good Phil really is at this point. Maybe I'm just a hater with Phil, but, we were just talking about all the talent in that range. I kind of think he's towards the bottom. The upside, Mike was talking earlier with Ram, and I kind of apply that to Phil in the sense that he's the guy, even in tough conditions, he can outscore his placement just because how erratic he is. I think there's a big cut risk with Phil because there always is, but man, he certainly has upside. So in tournaments, it's hard to hate on that, but I do kind of worry about him handling a course like this.
All right, so the two that we just kind of completely avoided here at the very top was Hideki, and then we have Stenson. Obviously, Stenson's going to be more popular. He's in much better form. Is Hideki, Mike, the pivot play of all pivot plays here if you got the guts for it?
I'm generally in on Hideki. I don't see any reason to change that up now.
Well, how about this? The fact that he had one good round at Memorial, basically. And that's a place where he dominated.
That's all I needed, Pat. Give me that one good round. Inject it into my veins. I'm back. I'm with Hideki. Let's do this. And I'm playing in cash games. Stenson, I'm playing. I think him and Casey are probably the two best guys to start your cash games with this week. It's kind of crazy that you can play them for the average cost of a roster spot. But give me Hideki for tournaments. I know at the U.S. Open last year, he was one of the best in tee to green strokes gained. And so I think in a U.S. Open course, like he can still get it done. Obviously, the form ever since he's come back from that injury hasn't been that great. And it's still concerning that we haven't seen him string together a bunch of rounds, even though he had that great opening round at the Memorial. All that said, though, with the guys that we've talked about that could be chalk in this area, you got to think that Hideki comes in with a really low number.
Yeah, I happen to think so, too. So, Ben, would you go Hideki, or would you just kind of eat the chalk and go Stenson, the guy that hits more fairways than anyone else on tour, and still actually hits it out there quite a ways?
It's Hideki for me. Not even that close. Yeah, Stenson for cash, no doubt. But Hideki, one of my favorites of the whole week. He showed me, I guess, enough in that Blue Premier. It's one of those things, if he was playing better, yeah, that would be nice. I'd feel more comfortable, but he would probably be a little higher owned and a little higher priced. I'm willing to kind of say, you know what, I want to be early on a guy like that. He has the talent, and if you get good Hideki, things kind of just take care of themselves. So I think this is a pretty good spot to buy low on him to an extent. And I think it could be a big reward.
Yeah, he gained almost 5 strokes through approach at Memorial, and he always gained strokes around the green, which is nice. And if you look at his putting splits between Bermuda, between Bent, and between POA, POA is the only surface he actually gains strokes putting on, which is really interesting for this week. I don't know how much the POA split is going to come into it. We know that Hideki plays a lot of his best golf very early in the season. I know he's won Bridgestone, he's won Memorial, but when you just look at his overall results, that like swing from like October into March is when Hideki does his business. I think I'm on board with you here, but I hate fading Stenson because I know Stenson's going to be like T13 at the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking to all-out fade Stenson by any stretch. I just, you you pair him with Casey and you take a couple of the obvious guys, you're going to have a tough time separating. So I'll use Stenson in certain lineups where I have, you know, some real shady characters as we dip down. But Hideki is one of my favorites this week.
All right, Mike, I'm going to give you a list of names from 7,500 to 7,900, and you tell me your two favorites from here. Adam Scott, Alex Noren, Louis Oosthuizen, Mark Leishman, Patrick Cantlay, Webb Simpson, Charles Schwartzel, Francesco Molinari, Matt Kuchar, Keegan Bradley, and Daniel Berger. Can you do it without saying Francesco Molinari?
I can do it. I'll go Webb Simpson and I guess Patrick Cantlay.
All right, Ben, who are your two favorites from that level?
I'm going to say Patrick Cantlay and Uste.
Okay, so you've both said Patrick Cantlay. People are picking Patrick Cantlay to win this event. They like the form that's coming in. He's going to be one of the highest owned guys, and he's going to be one of these chalk guys from the $7,000 range. If you take Justin Rose, or you take Dustin Johnson, and you have those two guys together, or you put them with, let's say, a Stenson or a Casey, one of these guys, can you have Patrick Cantlay on that team?
I'd probably go elsewhere if you're starting with a super chalk star and you think Cantlay's going to be that high owned. And man, I'm just having nightmares because I was super heavy on him at the Masters when he was low owned, and it went horribly. And I feel like I want to use him this week to get it back. But if he's going to be very chalky, you saw my hesitation picking him from this group. Whereas like Webb, I feel more confident in, even if he's a little bit more chalky.
All right, how come neither of you, and Ben, I'll throw it to you, why not take the best player in this range and Alex Noren? That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, Alex Noren. There are some guys I have a tough time getting a feel for him. You know, he struggled, then he got it together, and he kind of reverted back. He was a disaster at the Masters, better at the Players, hasn't been doing too much. He's the kind of guy I can see myself just kind of not letting him beat me, not making a big stand. I wouldn't be stunned to see me just cancel the field with him. No problem using him. I'm sure I will in lineups that kind of just fit salary rise, but for me, I don't really see a big result one way or the other with him.
Well, you kind of hit on it earlier. If this gets windy and you got the fescue going around and this turns into like an open championship type thing, like those are the types of courses that I want to play Alex Noren on.
And that's where he'll be for me. Like even Cantlay, I just said I like him. There are certain teams where I won't touch him at all because I just don't want to play him in certain conditions. I think he would struggle in certain areas. And then there are ones where I'll lean heavily, with some of these iron stacks. So Noren fits the bill, absolutely. If it's really tough, it more resembles what he sees. I mean, he's playing more over here, but tougher Euro conditions with wind and weather, absolutely. He's definitely more appealing when he doesn't have to worry about streaks in general. Obviously, not going to be a big deal this week. You're going to see much less of them. Even the under 70 bonus, I would venture to say no one will get that unless it plays a little easier than I think it will be. But someone like Noren, I like him more in that kind of grinded out fest.
Mike, I'll let you spew on Molinari. He did win, so that's nice. It was the BMW championship on the Euro Tour. But do you think that he carries ownership here? Or are people going to look at his skill set and say, yeah, no thanks?
I'm hoping people say no thanks. I do, even though it was my top two, I'm still in on Molinari. We've got him, 15th in our adjusted strokes gained tee to green over the last 2 years of the golfers in this field, it's just a really good number. And you guys mentioned the total driving package matters this week. Yes, the emphasis is more on distance, but someone that's going to continually hit fairways like Molinari. I mean, you guys know I'm a sucker for Molinari, so I'm going to keep playing him, and I would be surprised if he carried ownership over, Kuchar. Seems like everyone plays him, every major. We're talking about Cantlay being chalk, and you start to run out of spots for guys to be heavily owned.
Yeah, and that's why I think that Noren flies under the radar. I like Noren by far the best of the guys in this range, but the other two that I'm going to go with, one is Charles, and I kind of hope he has a sort of disastrous week in Memphis. He's not currently having a disastrous week, but there's time for him. He's really turned his off the tee game around, which I really like. And I just know that there's something with the South African US Opens. Retief Goosen won the last time it was at Shinnecock Hills. I know that when the putter gets going, and that was really his downside of Memorial, he just lost the putting stroke, which is very atypical of Charles Schwartzel, that on some of these longer holes, he hits long irons really well. If he can just keep it in the fairway, or at least just not like hit balls out of bounds, I think you're going to see Charles there at the end of the week, Ben.
Here we go. Every time I'm on your show, I say the same thing. The South Africans, I can't get them right. Between him and Usti and Grace, I don't know. For me, it's Usti. I'd rather roll the dice there. Charles, definitely, he is coming for me. He got a swing coach. Certainly paying some dividends. He was much better after that miserable stretch during the Masters and a couple others. He was great. Wells Fargo with the players. I think he's obviously worthwhile for tournaments, but I'm going to see myself kind of rolling those shares to Usti, another South African who I feel like you actually can't predict. He's just great until he's terrible, and then he just becomes great again, seemingly at random, but he is in good form, if that means anything.
Yeah, he's been less consistent this year than almost any other in his career. Like, I think he missed 2 straight cuts like a month ago. It was the first time he had missed 2 straight cuts, like 4 years or something like that. So, of the sort of pivot guys in this area, Mike, where are you going?
I like Daniel Berger at 7,600 as my main pivot. Hopefully you can't hear Micah screaming. Sorry about that. But I think he's got the distance that you're looking for. I know he hasn't had a very good year, but of course that's why you're getting this price. That's why you're considering him a pivot and not a main guy. So he's the guy I'm looking at as my primary pivot in GPPs.
Yeah, for me, the pivot play from down here, like I actually objectively like Charles. I don't think I'm going to make him like a core guy, but I'm going to have 15 to 20% exposure to him in my lineups. But God help me, I kind of like Keegan Bradley.
I don't know what to say. I mean, yeah,
okay,
more power to you, man.
How about this?
He's been great.
He has been. He has been great. Like Adam Scott and Keegan Bradley are quickly becoming the same player, except Keegan's more consistent.
Just shows where Adam Scott's at in his life. But yeah, I mean, we've seen it. The talent, the tee to green is phenomenal. It's just so debilitating. Putting can always come around, but with those guys, it's to the point where you're almost hoping. I mean, you are hoping that they just don't completely derail their entire week with just one of those ice cold where they can't even make 5-footers. This place, if it is very tough, you're gonna have to make 5, 6, 8 footers to save par in a lot of spots. I'm not sure Keegan can hold it together, but tee to green, he's one of the best. He's just an incredible tee to green player.
Well, let me ask you this then, Mike. Did you know that Keegan Bradley has actually been a positive putter on POA over the past 2 years? And from U.S. Open to U.S. Open, so we go from Erin Hills to Shinnecock Hills, he's missed 1 cut in that span over 20 events.
I did not know that. If we're playing the Did You Know game, you win this battle, Mayo.
Like that's for a guy that consistently putts so poorly. The fact that he's making so many cuts that, it's like we talk about Luke List every week. Hey, if he did, it's not about him gaining 8 strokes putting on the field. If he can just not lose 5, he's probably going to end up inside the top 5. Like, Keegan's won a major before. He has the elite tee to green game. He's one of the few guys that hits it long and hits it straight. I don't want to take Keegan Bradley, but I'm going to end up taking Keegan Bradley.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I don't think I'm going to wind up on Keegan. Maybe it's just this bias from him. When I started playing PGA DFS, I wasn't immersed in the golf industry at all. So my first experiences to Keegan Bradley were not kind experiences. I know Drew was laughing at me one time when I got excited because I owned Keegan and he was winning a tournament in the first round. And I think he ended up missing the cut. And he's like, there's your initiation into Keegan Bradley. The interesting wrinkle just from a macro perspective is because when I hear Keegan, I just think he doesn't have the upside you need to win a Million Maker. But we talked about this too with the larger field than the Masters, with probably some more variance with how tough it's going to play. You don't need you don't need 6 guys in the top 10 like you do in the Masters. So if you get someone that can grind out a top 20, even if he doesn't have a super high end finish in him. If he's cheap enough, you can make that work. All that said, I still think Keegan's a little pricier for a guy that I like in that mold, just because I think there are guys with just a lot more legitimate top 10 upside than him.
All right, Ben. Mike is out on Keegan. Did I sell you on a sub 5% Keegan?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I'm with Mike. I'll throw my support behind Berger as well. I do like him. I think that's a very good call. So that's where I'll be looking primarily. But you did intrigue me enough to – Keegan would have been – if you asked me to throw a couple guys, just cross them off this list, Keegan certainly would have been a name I probably would have uttered. So I'm going to take a second look at him. And yeah, I mean, when you're talking about upside at the players, I mean, he was great. I did have some Keegan exposure, and he was – when he gets dialed in with those irons, which can happen, obviously, it's incredible. So you may talk me into a couple Keegan lineups, which I'll be billing you for on Friday. But
well, how about we do this? You guys like Daniel Berger. I like Keegan Bradley. What's your price on the head-to-head bet? Even money.
I'll go even money on that.
Yeah, so I.
All right, $50 each?
In DraftKings scoring, is that what the...
Yeah, sure. DraftKings scoring, Keegan versus Berger. So I'm just going to win as soon as Keegan makes the cut and Berger shoots like 85 the first day.
That would be a good start for you, yeah. But that won't be happening. Me and Mike will be ahead of the game.
Makes more birdies the first 2 days. Keegan does all 4 days.
Oh, please get over yourself. You know what? I would take Keegan over fucking Molinari too.
Okay, 50.
I might do that too. I'm not a Molinari guy.
I'm in on that too. So we got 100 each. We got Keegan versus Berger, Keegan versus Molinari. Boom. I'm gonna not be rich, but
anybody else you want to take Keegan against?
No, just start chucking names at me.
I just pick anybody else in the 7,600
in the field, basically.
No, I'm comfortable with those two. That's enough. I mean, now that I'm going to have like 15% Keegan and I have head-to-head bets with him, we're looking good here on Keegan Bradley. If he comes like, when he wins, it's going to be like, yeah, cha-ching.
I mean, I hope if I lose the bet, it's because he wins and you just take home all of the money.
You know what? If I win the Millionaire Maker with Keegan Bradley in my lineup, I'll wipe the bets off. How about that? Because I'm a generous guy. Fuck off.
Yeah, that's very generous. We'll do the same for Berger. So
okay. So basically, I'm rooting for screw it.
If I win the Millie Maker, I will give you guys more than a wave $50 bet. We'll play a nice round of golf somewhere.
And you'll have a Josh Allen jersey sent to your house if I win it. So,
all right.
Presents all around.
Listen, none of these guys are doing anything except Francesco and Berger are going to miss the cut and Keegan's going to make the cut. Therefore, I am declared the winner. But Matt Kuchar, before we move on, we just kind of glossed over him like, hey, he's going to be super popular. He's 7,600. He's always super popular. I think he's going to be one of the 5 highest owned players in this field. I'll probably have none. Mike, Kuchar's the reason you came second in the Masters Millionaire Maker. Do you just have an affinity for him where you're going to play him?
I came in third in the Thunderdome with him at the Open Championship too. So I've got this affinity for him, but it goes back to something that's Ben said before on the show, and sometimes I get away from it because I get a little gung-ho for these majors, but you can build chalky lineups if you can differentiate elsewhere. So he's a steady type of play, but he's someone I will definitely be underweight on. I don't want to say I'm going to full fade, but I'll be underweight on. He's another one of those guys that I'm not going to play in cash games, so why would I force myself to play him at chalk levels in tournaments?
Ben, in or out on Kuchar?
Yeah, he was on my Thunderdome team for the Masters, so he is good to us, but I'm in line with Mike. He's a fringe cash play for me. I think you could go there depending on the build. Tournaments, if I do something crazy up top and I say, you know what, that's going to be my leverage. I want some steady guys in that mid-range. Maybe I look to him, but not at the top on the list. If he's popular, which I think he will be, I'll be underweight.
Last guy, Mark Leishman. No mention of him. Could be windy. If it's windy, Leishman plays well in the wind. He played really well at the Masters. He gagged it at the Byron Nelson a few weeks ago. He's a very quality player. Ben, it's like when you said you can't get a grasp on the South African guys. I just don't know when to play Mark Leishman.
Yeah, he should be South African because I'm with you. He's another one I can't get right. I like him though. I think he's another one for me. When you asked me those 2 favorites, he was third for me. Similar to Usti, it's tough to gauge exactly how good he is. The form, he pops. It's got the talent. I'm going to use him. Think I can get overweight without allocating a ton of ownership to him, and that's appealing.
Mike, in or out on Leishman?
I'm in on Leishman. We have him as a top 25 player in the field, and I think that merits using him at this price tag.
All right. So we talked about ownership a little bit as it pertained to you don't want to use it too much, but knowing who is going to be chalk and who is going to be under-owned can give you excellent leverage in some of these tournaments depending on your build like the guys have talked about. So who are going to be the highest owned players in the US Open DraftKings Millionaire Maker? Let's find out. Gauging ownership is a key element in navigating the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, and that's why I'll be dedicating an entire show to it next Tuesday. But even a week out, a few names stick out who are gonna be chalky. With a win and a tie for 6th in his past 2 turns, 2013 US Open winner Justin Rose is going to be very popular at 9,900. And he should be. He's a great player who plays great against great fields and is a great price. He's great! Just know, if you take Rose, you're gonna have to save some ownership elsewhere. From down in the pricing, expect Matt Kuchar to carry a chunk of ownership. He always does at majors. People put a price tag on consistency and value, and Kuch is priced below $8,000. And when you consider the DraftKings Millionaire Maker is gonna attract a slew of casual players who only enter for the majors, Kuch is a nice, safe name they've actually heard of to plug into a lineup. Fade! Rick, who are you projecting as your highest owned player?
There's a few guys that will garner large chunks of ownership this week with the pricing being super soft. You can essentially roster any stud that you want, and when the masses are given that option, they're going to take the best option, Dustin Johnson. The odds-on favorite has been banging down the door to victory in his last 6 weeks, and he comes in with a ridiculous US Open record. He has a win, a 2nd, and a 4th place finish, all since 2014. DraftKings pricing is essentially begging everyone to take DJ, and they will. Ever steady Matt Kuchar is going to suck up the ownership in the mid 7,000 range, coming in with strong showings at both the Players and the Memorial. He is going to put his elite US Open record on the line this week. Listen to this. 3 top 16 finishes in his last 4 years, and only 1 finish outside the top 30 in his last 8 US Open trips.
Jeff?
From the high end, Pat, as far as top ownership goes, I think Brooks Koepka is just going to garner a lot of ownership this week, and for good reason. I mean, Brooks has been super consistent since he's come back from injury. Obviously, he had the runner-up finish at Colonial. He shot 63 a couple of times, but at 9K, he's very affordable. He's a defending champion, and I think distance is going to be talked up a lot the week prior, so that just fits right into Brooks's wheelhouse. I think Bryson DeChambeau at 8,300 should garner ownership. Justin Rose too, but I think Brooks is the guy who's going to garner the most in that range. And then lower down, kind of in the mid-tier range, Tony Finau, similar story, 7,500 for a guy who hits it so far, has been super consistent, and just DFS players just love him anyways. So 7,500, I think Finau's going to soak up all the ownership in that range. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. Obviously, you got other popular players down there. Peter Uline's playing well. He's cheap. Patrick Cantlay, maybe Webb Simpson, but I think Finau's going to be the most popular in that range this week.
Kenny Kim?
The highest owned is usually someone in the 8K to low 9K range that can be paired with your favorite stud. So I think Brooks Koepka will be the highest owned guy over 9K this week, especially if he does well in Memphis. He just fits well as a second golfer in a lineup with one of the 10K and up guys. My projected highest owned mid-price golfer is probably Tony Finau. His game looks like he can fit well at Shinnecock, and he's always a popular DFS option. If he does well in Memphis, I'm almost 100% sure he'll be highly owned. If he does poorly, maybe misses the cut in Memphis, Patrick Cantlay might be able to overtake him as the highest owned. Either way, Tony Finau will be the highest owned golfer, one of the highest owned golfers in that 7K range.
Back with Mike and Ben, talking about the $7,500 to $7,000 level, and there are 2 very obvious plays, maybe even 3 from this range. Do you guys know who they are? Mike, you first. Who are the 3?
The guy that I'm going to play.
Mayo's 3 first.
Oh, Mayo's 3? Tony Finau.
Boop.
Luke List.
Boop.
And
Woo!
Siwoo.
Let's roll the dice. Let's roll the dice on guys that can't putt. Why not?
Siwoo was 8th in strokes gained tee to green at the US Open last year.
Siwoo is an excellent player, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
I was going to question it as well, but that's not my man. That's your guy. That's your account.
So you guys are out on Siwoo?
I am out on Siwoo.
That is egregious. Why? How can you be out on Siwoo? You know he's going to come in at like 2% ownership.
Is this year Siwoo's worth playing at 2% because when he goes off, he can win?
Yeah, of course. Like, you only need to play him at 5%, and he can win this event. And tee to green, he's actually quite good. And if he gets one of these putting rounds, all of a sudden he's looking great.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible there's guys that just break our model because they're so variant in their scoring distributions that we're regressing that too much. But based on his scoring averages, we have him with a 0.35% chance of winning the tournament. And I think of top 10, just a 5% chance. So I'm out on Siwoo. Well,
Siwoo has won, I believe it is 3% of the tournaments that he's ever entered. That's pretty good.
That is very good.
And he's still under 25 years old. If he wins, he doesn't have to serve in the military. There's always that coming along with him. And he's won the Players' Championship, which is a harder field than this one.
He does have narrative street, yeah, without having to serve in the military. I don't know. He is super polarizing. I will say that. He is very tough to gauge. His irons, though, lately in particular, not great.
Yeah, not great.
Really not.
But if I'm going to lean off the tee more than I'm going to lean approaches, I think they're both very important. He does hit the ball really well off the tee.
Yeah, he does. No, that's fair. Still probably not going to get there, in all honesty. But the Siwoo Kim 2%, play 8%, and move on with your life is always a decently viable strategy.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to have my outright bet on him to win and come inside the top 7 as well. So maybe that's a better allocation of my funds. But I just think that in a tournament like this, where if you can spike a winner, he's one of the few guys that I really do think has winning upside. He has dead last upside, or downside, if you would. But, my main man, woo! Gets the woo from me, so I'm going to have him in. Luke List. You know I always like Luke List. If you punch him into any statistical model, he's going to pop out near the top. Unless you include putting, then it doesn't really work out so well. But, Mike, I'm in on Luke List. I'm always in on Luke List. And people weirdly hate Luke List now, and I don't quite understand it.
I don't understand it either. He's third in strokes gained tee to green this season. He's third in driving distance. I know driving distance isn't a great metric because there's a lot of caveats there, but still, he's the one who can put it out there. When we've been talking about distance needed, we've been talking about tee to green game. He fits both of those. 7,200. You get some dicey names in the low 7Ks. He's not one of the dicey names, in my opinion. So I'm in on Luke List. I'm hoping that whatever this, this is another one of those weird guys where he was mega chalk for a while. I don't think he's really played poorly since then. And for whatever reason, I don't know if people just got sick of playing him or what. Hopefully the ownership is tempered. It's not going to be low, but hopefully it's tempered.
He was mega chalk at St. Jude after all the withdrawals. So, Ben, do you think that if he disappoints in Memphis, and a disappointment right now for Luke List is like, hey, if he doesn't come inside the top 5, he sucks, which is really bizarre. But at this price tag, like, if he makes the cut, he, like Phil, like Rom, like some of these other guys, that he's going to outscore his placement point in terms of DraftKings points regardless, I think.
He definitely is one of those players. There's a couple things. I like him, and I agree with everything you guys were saying. I do worry, though, about him in a field like this, at a course like this. He's kind of found a blueprint at just kind of shorter tracks where he can club down, avoid spraying. He has the length, obviously, to handle this. He certainly does. I do worry about him getting into massive trouble. So you want to throw a couple darts and hope that he can get through this cut, use his scoring ability. I think that's reasonable, but it's not. He's been playing consistent golf, but I don't think at a major like this, that's really going to come into play. It's still a pretty big game.
Third tee to green, Ben. Third.
Yeah, but the way he's been doing it, I mean, all these shorter courses like Heritage, you have Valspar, things like that. This is not that. This is fescue land. I just worry about him really unraveling with a couple really bad holes. I think he's a viable candidate to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reason why you wouldn't just make him such a strong core play that you have him in 35% of your lineups. I don't think that you're going to need him in that many, but I want to have enough of his upside, almost like Siwoo. He'll be higher owned than Siwoo, but if I own Siwoo at 5%, I'm thinking list at 10, 15% to sprinkle in and out, and that brings us to Tony Finau. Mike, your favorite golfer in the world, but you know that he's going to carry a 20% ownership here.
I'm still going to play him. I don't care. I'm obsessed with Tony Finau. I'm a fanboy. He's got the distance. He's got the approach game. I think he's ascending to be one of the better golfers. I mean, obviously, he's still got a ways to go, but he's improved his short game over the past season. So I'm in on Finau. He's someone that I'm going to be conscious of differentiating my lineups around him. But especially if I'm making, if I do the Ben strategy where I do similar skill lineups, if I make a Bombers type team, for example, he's going to be on there.
All right, well, Ben, I want to throw the one pivot name at you, and this is a guy that I would have been all over if he just wasn't playing like ass. But Xander Schauffele is right there.
That's the guy I wanted to bring up too. Off the tee lately. I mean, he's one of those guys. He's another one. Great driver of the ball. Seems like it would fit here. Him being priced right next to Finau is a plus for him because it's going to be a great pivot spot just in the ownership game. I'm very worried about the recent form. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I like Finau, significantly better, but so is the field. I'm going to have some Xander shares, but man, it's concerning what I've seen. He has been really bad in this, certainly the recent form.
Yeah, after coming in second place at the Players, the past 2 events, he's been a huge negative in tee to green, which is frankly quite stunning. Still a very good putter on POA, and I was thinking about corollary courses of, like, I don't think that any one thing is going to match up with Shinnecock Hills in a U.S. Open type setup, but I do think that Riviera is probably the closest you're going to find for narrower fairways, POA grass, at least on the greens, and the way that you're going to have to shape some of the shots off the tee with a lot of doglegs coming out. So, Mike, Xander's played really well at Riviera over the years.
I'm still not in on Xander. He's one of the guys that our model has really not been buying into, even when he was playing really well there. So maybe it's a false signal, but the fact that we weren't on him and then he started to struggle, that could be a false confirmation. But for me, that just tells me, okay, we're probably right. He just had a good little blip there, and he's just not that good of golfer and not deserving of being as part of your tournament mix in any meaningful way this week.
Okay, so Mike, we'll stick with you. Who are the 3 guys from this range you really want to talk about?
Well, Finau, we already talked about, but RCB, Rafael Cabrera-Bello, seems like another guy that I'm using consistently at the majors. Just seems to be underpriced at 7,200. You look at his, recent form, his results. Some of it's in euro, but they're all pretty good. And I don't have any particular course fit for him. I just think for his overall skill as a golfer that he should be more in that mid 7,000 range, and you're gonna need to dip down into the low 7Ks when you start building, especially if you're building some teams with DJ up top, which I plan on doing.
Well, one of my biggest gripes with Rafa Cabrera-Bello is the driving distance. He hits a ton of fairways, but he doesn't really get it out there all that much. Ben, are you in on RCB?
Yeah, don't mind RCB. He doesn't hit far, but he's one of those guys. He kind of he's got the ability to do it. Similar to Monar, good with the irons to the extent that doesn't cost him too much. That's just how he plays. He's effective at it. So I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed here, overpowered. The one guy I want to talk about, though, is Peter Uihlein, my boy. I'm certainly a fanboy of him. Finally getting the form together. I've been waiting, playing him through some dark times. Now he's coming out. Got a good recent form. I hope he's not too good this week because I really like him at a U.S. Open where he might be overmatched. He's kind of my Siwoo Kim-esque guy in this range.
But he hasn't won the Players like Siwoo Kim.
That's true. He hasn't done anything really useful, but I think he's a much better player. Maybe I'm biased. And he is just playing much better. He's getting it together, tee to green. He was fantastic at Memorial. We saw him at Wells Fargo. That was more putting than anything, though. And I just think another one where just the talent level, similar to RCB, not in game, but just in just the way he is a quality golfer who I think next year and years to come, we'll see him higher than where he is. This is a buy low spot for me.
All right, Mike, is there anyone else here to crack your top 3 and guys that you like? Because you talk about Rafa Cabrera-Bello. What if you just basically took American Rafa Cabrera-Bello, who's playing better right now, Kyle Stanley?
Yeah, I think he's here, but I'm kind of lukewarm on that. The other guys I like here, we've talked about how bad he's been playing, so I don't know if I can pull the trigger. We were talking about this before the show, but Kevin Chappell, 7,200. Him and Shane Lowry both at 7,200, and then Hoffman. I know I went past 3 guys, but those are the guys that I'm trying to take a closer look at and decide how much I want to own of each of those.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have any of them. The other guys that sort of intrigue me around here, if I was going to take a few sprinkles, like Jimmy Walker, if he can figure out the driver, he seems very well suited for this course. But again, he's like Phil, like Tiger, one of these guys, you put the big stick in his hand and he just lost the ability to hit fairways. If that happens, he's fucked. So I think he's worth a sprinkle, but I just don't know how much.
I will say two guys that pop in our model that seem to never pop in our model are Jimmy Walker and Ian Poulter. And I don't think that I'm going to play either of them, but I'm surprised. Those are guys that generally don't pop. I know Poulter's put in some really good results recently. I don't know if, he has the distance, though, that you want on this course.
Well, in the model that I'm using from fantasynational.com, and Ben, maybe you can kind of weigh in on this as well, that from this range over the past 24 rounds, so short term, over the past few months, the names that the model likes the best from down here, 1 is Adam Hadwin, 2 is Jimmy Walker, 3 is Kyle Stanley, and Ian Poulter does pop up for me as well. He comes in at number 21 in this range, then Rafa Cabrera Bello. So do you have any real thoughts on them? Because I still kind of like Martin Keimer as well.
Oh, boy. Can he putt from off the greens?
He can, yes, he can.
Oh, well. That honestly, I mean, I was saying that kind of joking, but that is a real thing with him. Like, I don't want him chipping. That does add to the appeal slightly. The guys you just mentioned, I think for me, they're maybe just fillers, tournament flyers. I didn't find a ton from this range in terms of core plays. The Finaus there, a couple of those iron guys, but nothing really stuck out in the sense of I'm going to actively target any of these players.
Well, the one guy that everyone loves playing in DFS and is waiting for a breakthrough, and I just don't think that he's going to carry any ownership, and the form is still good. But like Chesson Hadley's only $7,000. He's been one of the best players on tour this year.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, an incredible iron player. I worry about him with difficult courses, though. I think he's one of those guys. Maybe it's a bias, but I just feel like a lot of the web.com guys are just geared to go low. They're more of attack. They don't have the grinded out skill because they're just used to, needing to shoot a really good round for 4 straight days to get the returns. And that's not what you need here. Maybe if it looks like it's going to play easier and there's no wind, I'll throw him into, because he's a great iron player. But if it's a scramble fest, that's not a guy I want.
No, maybe he can putt from off the greens too, and that kind of mitigates some of the difference. But
yeah, he's going to need to.
Mike, I saw you shake your head. So you're out on Chesson Hadley as well?
I'm out on Hadley. I just don't see it. No Hadley for me. One guy that I'm like, you want my Siwoo play of the week, it's probably going to be Ali, just because of the distance. But I know that I'm expecting laughter, but I didn't get any, so maybe that's good.
I'm an Ali guy too.
Are you? Yeah. Okay. I feel like I have to broach that subject carefully, and then okay, you're an Ali guy too. Awesome.
Yeah. That's tread lightly, but then once you give the sign, it's all good.
Good God. I know I lit my money on fire with Keegan Bradley wagers, but come on.
I mean, I'm talking like if you're MME.
Well, no, okay. Let me ask you both this. What is Ollie's actual upside? 60th?
Dude, I will say if his game log's hysterical in the sense that it's really hard to make as many cuts in a row as he has and not have one finish that's top 30.
Yeah. Do you know who his game logs actually resemble?
Who?
Tyrone van Aswagen.
Another South African.
Yeah,
you see what
the
happens?
distance, though, Pat. The distance.
Yeah, but there are guys that make the cut and then like come last of all the guys that make the cut.
Yeah, I'm going to catch some heat for talking about Ali on the show. The fan vice is not a fan of Ali in general. The upside, it's true. It
was my Siwoo play, man. That's my Siwoo play.
Yeah, at least my Siwoo play, Siwoo can win.
I'll book Ali versus Siwoo.
Sure.
Let's do a 3-ball because I want Peter Uihlein.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I like Uihlein. I'm not in on that.
Smart man. I'll come with Ali with you. I don't like Siwoo, so.
All right, Ali.
We'll join forces.
Pack it on.
All right. Throw Siwoo onto there, too. There's a lot of, like, old, shorter type hitters in this range. Like, Kisner's here, Snedeker's here. Fitzpatrick's not old, but, he's one of those guys as well. Haas. Pat Perez is kind of intriguing. Henley's there. Hatton, who's just could freak out at a moment's notice. We talked about Ross Fisher as a guy that is Ross Fisher a sleeper? Like the guy can drive, the guy is accurate.
I was pretty surprised to hear those statistics you had on him, because he really didn't pop at all for me heading into this when I was doing my prep.
Well, the thing is, it was a really long-term look at it over the past 100 rounds, and obviously when I'm using it, it's not factoring in a lot of his Euro stats, but he tends to show up in these WGCs, and he shows up in majors all of a sudden. You're like, Ross Fisher's in third? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, he's shown flashes. I get that. I don't know. It just hasn't been good lately. Not someone. It's funny. I'll be honest. Obviously I prepped. I didn't really see his name much looking at anything. I was stunned to hear his name included with those drivers that you mentioned earlier. Are we not going to mention Bill Haas? I have to mention him just because it's Bill Haas, and I'm the only Bill Haas fan around.
No. How about that?
Just no, nothing.
What does he do well here?
I mean, he doesn't do anything well anymore, but the thing with Bill Haas is that he's a grinder in the sense that he benefits if it's lower scoring. He can hold it together around the green, putting. His approaches at Memorial were a severe problem. I'll be the first to admit that. And he's just not playing great, but I may throw a couple of shares. Uline is the guy, though, if I'm getting egregious in that area.
All right, so we talked about Ross Fisher as a potential sleeper. Woo is a potential sleeper. You got Uline on the go. Leone loves Ollie, but who do the big three like as their top sleepers? Plus my favorite one. Let's find out. You need to understand the difference between a sleeper and a legit dart throw. Sung Jae Im and Dean Burmeister, dart throws. Brendan Steele, sleeper. Entering with shaky form, Steele's been priced down to $6,800. But in spite of his current struggles, Steele remains top 20 in the field and off the tee, ball striking, approach, driving distance, and tee to green. If his irons are off and this becomes a chipping contest for him, he's fucked. However, while generally an awful putter, POA is his preferred putting surface. These are the risks that you take with a $6,800 player. The blow-up factor is factored into the price, but he has incredible upside here. Ulrich, who's your top sleeper?
For my sleeper play this year, Pat, I'm going to go really deep. I'm going all the way down to the bottom, the min price. I'm going to Lucas Herbert from Australia. Very talented young player. He's put up a couple top fives on the European Tour recently. This is a player with a lot of distance off the tee. He absolutely smoked his qualifying heat to get into the tournament. But he is the type of player who could put up a lot of birdies this week. And if he makes the cut, he could really, really pay off that short salary. So some players talking up that Im character from theweb.com, Siwoo Kim. I like both those guys, but give me some Herbert. We've seen young players like Andrew Landry, Cameron Smith pop up at the US Open in the past, and I think Herbert could possibly be that guy this week.
Kenny.
Keegan Bradley is my sleeper pick for the US Open. He's probably one of the only golfers inside the top 50 in driving distance that's also inside the top 20 in driving accuracy. His tee to green game is one of the best in the world. His long irons are solid, and his iron play overall is exceptional as he's second on tour in strokes gained approach. We all know how awful his putter is, but he has gained strokes putting in 2 of his last 3 events.
Rick.
There appears to be at least one elite sleeper in this field, and that is Brendan Steele. For all the talk about strokes gained approach being important, we have to like Steele, who's averaging the 8th most strokes gained off the tee since January 1st. That's more than Jason Day, Justin Thomas, Justin Rose, Jordan Spieth, and Rory McIlroy in the same span. Steele has proven his chops with a 13th place finish at the US Open last year and a 15th in 2016. There's definitely concerns about his putter, but he's a killer value at only $6,900.
All right, $7,000 players and below, the scrubs you're going to be using to round out your Dustin Johnson teams. And I don't think it's necessary to go over every player in this range because most of them are just not rosterable, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't want NHL referee and Canadian amateur Garrett Rank in my lineup. Sorry, Garrett, but, I don't need you in this field. I really don't care. So, guys that I like, my biggest sleeper, as people just found out, is in this range. He's $6,800. The form has been a bit shaky recently, but, man, I love Brendan Steele this week.
Okay, I was worried that you were going to say Gary Woodland, which
I thought that's where I was going.
I'm not sure I could have handled that. Yeah, Brandon's. Yeah, I think he's one of the best players down here. I certainly see the narrative for going to him. Just down here, this is where talent is kind of one of the things I weigh most. Just who I think is a better golfer. Because you have guys who are unplayable, and you have guys that maybe they're not in the best form. Maybe there's a couple other factors. But if things broke slightly differently, they would be in that Finau mid-sevens range in terms of talent. And Brendan Steele kind of fits that mold. I worry a little about the around the green, but if he can hit enough greens, dial it in with the irons, he could be a tail end guy that I'll be using.
So one guy for you down here, Mike. Who's the one guy that you will be using in a lot of lineups?
I bet you can pick who it is.
CH3.
Now, old man Steve Stricker. And this goes back to the thought process that I don't think you're going to need to have all 6 golfers in the top 10. It's going to be a tough field. I think we're going to see a decent amount of variance. We've got a full field in terms of the cut. So I think that he's a steady type of golfer that the fact that he might not make a whole ton of birdies isn't going to hurt him this week. And if he gives me a top 15 to 20 as my 6th golfer, that can be enough.
The one thing I worry about with Stricker, despite the fact that he continues to just plays week after week after week after week, and like we saw him wrench his back, then all of a sudden he was fine. And he ended up playing quite well at Fort Worth, but like he's playing on the Champions Tour, he's bouncing back and forth. But here are his PGA starts. Just look at the courses that he's played so far this season. He played Phoenix, which is somewhat long. He's played Pebble, which is super short. He's played Valspar, which is super short. At Shell, which is a bit longer, he missed the cut. Players is super short. Fort Worth, super short. He is playing the St. Jude, which is a longish par 70, but this is an even longer par 70. Like if you're going to say you're going to go with distance, and distance does matter a lot here. I know accuracy does as well, and so does short game, but it just doesn't seem like Stricker fits.
No, he's definitely not a course fit. This is just me saying I think he's so underpriced relative to scale that I'm willing to overlook the course fit, and I don't imagine people are going to be playing Steve Stricker much, so I don't need a whole ton of them. I know you said a guy that you're going to be using in a lot of lineups, but frankly, there is no single guy that I'm using in a lot of lineups this low. And Ben laughed at Gary Woodland, but I do think there is some appeal there just because, you do get the distance out of him. We've seen the upside, but man, he's been horrific since he won at the Waste Management.
So Ben, who's your guy from down here?
It's Charles Howell, who I don't know what has happened. I'm not joking. I didn't play him for probably like 18 months when he was 30% owned week after week. Now I'm playing him all the time. I've played him the last 3 weeks. He's been good. Memorial, he just had an ice cold putter. And he's just, for me, you mix in the recent form, the consistency, tee to green. I think that's for me the best you can do, sub 7. Woodland, yeah, he's got the firepower. The form is so bad. He showed a little life, but I'm not sure I can trust it. So I don't mind ending, if I get really aggressive up top and say I try to pair 2 10K plus guys, I don't mind running that out with someone like Charles Howell.
Are there any other players that actually do stand out to you down here, Ben, that you do really want to talk about other than like, hey, Sharma, maybe, probably not kind of thing, but someone like you're actually committed to playing?
Honestly, not really. There are a couple that you just said, in that range where it's like, oh, Thorborn Olesen, he's kind of interesting, like Alexander Levy. But, if I don't get them in some lineups, I'll probably play about 50 lineups. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I just really don't see that the talent gap is so severe, and pricing, it's not as loose as Mike alluded to earlier, but it's still soft enough where you don't really have to go down here if you don't want to. You don't. So I will try to avoid it.
Maybe. I know like someone like Lucas Herbert is someone that's going to pop up for some people just because they've been playing Euro DFS. Like he's been playing really well too. Do you think that he could be somewhat of a fit? I know you play Euro, don't you?
Yeah, not as much as I used to be honest. I think it's just what you kind of said it with Ollie. That's a guy, even if you get it right, I don't know how big the reward is. Ryan Fox is another one. Talk about an absolute bomber. He will be in my bomber stacks. Like I will make a couple teams where I just look straight at distance and say, I'm just going to throw him out there, and that guy can crush the ball. So if you find someone that does one specific thing really well down here, maybe you put him in a team like that. But I don't have a lot of guys I feel too comfortable with.
Like for me, I think Sung Jae Im is down here at $6,100. He lit up the Japanese tour. Now he's lighting up the Web.com tour. He's going to be on the PGA tour very soon. He's $6,100. I'm not advocating like going overweight on him. Although if you play him in a lineup, you will be massively overweight on him. But if I had him in like 2 of 20, well, that is somewhat risky. I think that he is someone that could get through the cut. Mike, do you have any of those guys on your radar?
I really don't have anyone sub 6,700 on my radar. You know, maybe Fox for the reasons Ben just mentioned, but I really don't have anyone, you know, this low on my radar.
Ben, what about Matthew Southgate? I just think that he's a good player.
Yeah, he is a good player. 6,400, I think that's a reasonable price. Again, I don't know if I'll have to go down there, but him and I was going to mention one more guy. Him and Burmeister are, for me, just at a talent standpoint, guys that I've used. I've seen them play. I feel more comfortable than, you know, there's a bunch of guys down here that I you know, they qualified. They're not of the caliber of even the Euro players. So yeah, Matthew Southgate and Burmeister, if you're really in a jam, he's the flat min. He's 6,000. I think you can make, just from the standpoint of lineup construction, you can do things with a $6,000 guy in your lineup that you're just not able to do most weeks. So I may look to them, but no more than a handful of lineups at most.
Well, if people do want to know more about the Burmista Mista lady, he was the favorite in the Euro event in Austria this week, and then he pulled out because he got in, so he just flew over to New York to get it going. So yeah, I think from a talent standpoint, I think that Im and Burmeister, of these like really low-end guys, are the talent upside you want. But then again, Mike, can you actually pull the trigger on any?
Yeah, it's difficult when you actually have to do that. It's something that if you're doing MME sprinkles and as you want to get into 10K plus guys, like maybe you have to do that. And you know, if this was the Masters, I would say unequivocally, just don't play these guys. It's just not worth it. But because if you get a 6-6 team with, if first, let's say it's like DJ and Spieth first and second, for example, the place points are going to carry so much emphasis that any DJ Spieth team that's 6-6, almost regardless of the other guys, is going to be the favorite to win it. So I see from a macro perspective why you're more tempted to do it this week than you would be on different majors. I mean, you're talking guys with like 20% chance to make the cut that we're looking at down here. You know, maybe the best of this group, you get up to, like with a Burmeister, to like a 40% chance to make the cut. It's really, really dicey. I mean, we're not talking a little bit dicey. We're talking really dicey down here. So
we mentioned Steele. We mentioned Woodland, Howell. I actually like Howell. I'll be using some Howell here. I think that he'll end up being, it's hard to say that anyone's going to be like chalk from the $6,000 level, but he could hit double digits in terms of ownership. You like Stricker. The other guys that I just wanted to, I don't even know if I'm going to play or not, but it intrigued me a little bit. So, Mike, we'll go to you first. I'm going to give you a list of like 4 or 5 names. Who do you like the best? Maybe you like 2 of them. Maybe you like none of them. The Beef is $6,900, a guy that plays really well on tough courses. Trey Mullinax leads the PGA Tour in driving distance. He's all over the map, but the guy can bomb it. He gets it out there. Sharma hits a ton of fairways. Fratelli's good off the tee and in total driving. He's $6,800. And I feel like there was one more, but there wasn't. Those are the guys.
Beef and Mullinax I have a little bit of interest in, and I like Ben's note on picking guys that are really good at one particular thing, you know, whether it's Beef being good on tough courses. With Mullinax, it's the distance. That's something that Colin Drewby, who you're going to have on the ownership show with you at Daily Roto, you know, he talks about that, because if you've got that one thing going really well that week and it ends up being the thing that matters, and then you just play a little bit better elsewhere, you like that better than guys that are just meh across the board and just, you know, there's not any one thing they can hang their hat on.
Ben, I'm going to throw Lucas Glover and Johnny Vegas into that mix too with those names.
Give me, Beef, I think, certainly a guy, tough course. I think that carries some weight here. So I'll take that. And then Fratelli, if it's windy, good driver, I think those are the kind of guys. Again, I'm with you in the sense that I'm not even sure they make my lineups, but I'm going to give them a look. You know, if I have to spread it out, a couple extra guys down here, I think they're at the top of my list.
Before the Wells Fargo, where he just was a disaster around the greens with his irons. He had gained at RBC Heritage, a less than driver course. Fratelli had gained 6.1 strokes off the tee. At Valero, a driver course, he gained 4.8. Like, the guy is good off the tee.
Yeah, he's a good player, a Texas guy. Another South African. I get myself into trouble with them, but yeah, I think he does have, the tee degree game to at least compete. And Mike, I'm going to say it again. Mike just talked about it. This is a situation, depending on who wins up top with the placement points, that lineup construction may dictate that you have to have a guy down here. If two top guys say they do go 1-2 and they carry the majority of your points, you just need these guys to grind, hopefully score a little and get through the cut. That may be good enough depending on how the week turns out.
I wouldn't advocate using anyone down here in cash. I just don't think that it's necessary, and you don't need to inherit that risk. But if you were to list the two safe guys from down here, knowing that no one is safe, for me, it would be Howell and Steele. Ben?
Yep, it's Howell and Steele for me too.
Mike?
I'll go Howell, and I'll still stay Stricker even with the distance concerns.
All right, that's going to round out the field. Hopefully you got some flyers from down here, and there's the difference between a sleeper and a dart throw. And these guys at the very bottom, the Burmeisters, the Southgates, the Foxes, the Ims, they're all dart throws. But we don't care about dart throws right now. We care about winners. Who is going to win the U.S. Open? I'm going to throw it to these two first. Mike, who is going to win the 2018 U.S. Open?
Give me my boy, Tony Finau. I owe Tony after I hopped off him at the Masters because I got concerned over the ankle. I haven't forgiven myself. This is the Tony Finau redemption tour as far as me using him to DFS. So Finau takes it down. I know it's a bit of a long shot, but I think he's got the distance and the approach game to do it.
Ben, 2018 U.S. Open winner of the best named trophy in sports, the U.S. Open trophy.
It's going to be Hideki Matsuyama. Another long shot to an extent. Just think the iron game is going to come back. Buy low spot, can get really hot, can handle the course. I'm going to take a stab with Hideki and hope we get the Hideki bot in order this week.
All right, who am I picking to win the 2018 U.S. Open? Let's get to it. It's come to this. Time to pick a winner. Everything in me wants to say Jordan Spieth. Not because I think he's gonna win, but because everyone has jumped off the bandwagon, and that's usually when Jordan ends up in the winner's circle. But I'll go with Jon Rahm. Smashes it off the tee, putts like a champion, and demolishes the par fours. Plus, he has 5 wins the last 2 years, and is in need of a major breakthrough. Like Brooks Koepka last year, this is the spot Rahm puts it all together. But let's bring in the entire golf community and hear who they have emerging victorious at Shinnecock Hills. First up, the man with the hottest picks in the biz so far in 2018, Brandon Guptill, the Gup, from gupscorner.com and the Smash Factor podcast.
Thanks, Pat. He's my pick to win the FedEx St. Jude Classic this week, and he's my pick to win the U.S. Open. He was my original pick to win back in January on the first ever Smash Factor, but I'm going with Mr. Dustin Johnson to not only win this week, but win next week. Parlay him up 77-1. DJ goes back to back.
Joe House from the Ringer's Shack House podcast.
Yo, Pat Mayo. Joe House here, co-host of the world-famous Shack House Golf Podcast, solo host of the House of Carbs food podcast for the hungry people, by the hungry people. Pat Mayo, I mentioned House of Carbs because this year's roster of potential winners of the 2018 U.S. Open Shinnecock Hills feels like a delicious buffet to me. Many, many options, many delectable offerings. When I'm at a buffet and I want to figure out how to prioritize my top-notch picks over the lesser picks, I look for the bulky guy. This year, Pat Mayo, the 2018 U.S. Open has one bulky guy. That's Phil Mickelson. Phil Mickelson is my pick for the 2018 U.S. Open. Strokes gained putting, second overall behind Jason Day. The best putting of his entire life. I love his attitude. He's talking about Shinnecock being the best setup he's seen in 25 years, and I love his track record at the Shinnecock. How about 4th in 1995? We all know he finished 2nd in 2004 because he was robbed by the USGA. Phil Mickelson is ready to right that wrong. He has the perfect attitude. His putter is on fire. Phil Mickelson is my winner for the 2018 U.S. Open.
David Barnett from the Tour Junkies podcast.
All right, Pat, so my pick to win the U.S. Open this year, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm thinking about GPPs, a guy I think who is finally ready to break out in majors. It's Tommy Fleetwood. He's a great ball striker, which you're going to need here at Shinnecock. If the wind picks up, which we know it can, he's a win player. Not the greatest long-term history in majors, but in the last major finished 17th, and in the U.S. Open last year finished 4th. In good form, coming off the T7 at the Players' Championship. Tommy Fleetwood is my pick to win the U.S. Open at Shinnecock.
Masters Millionaire Maker winner and FantasyGolfBag.com contributor Drew Matthews.
Pick to win the 2018 U.S. Open is going to be Dustin Johnson. He comes in ranked 1st in strokes gained tee to green, and more importantly, 1st in strokes gained off the tee. He's 4th in birdie average, 2nd in driving distance, 2nd in putting average, and so far this year he's racked up 10 finishes inside the top 17. In his past 4 U.S. Open starts, he has 3 top 5s. I think Dustin Johnson is ready to win his 2nd U.S. Open here at Shinnecock Hills.
Golflandia podcast, Ryan Baroff.
My pick to win the 2018 U.S. Open is one of only 2 players in the field who has played multiple U.S. Opens at Shinnecock Hills. In those events, he's finished 2nd and 4th. And you know the New York crowds are going to be pulling for him. He's a winner on tour this season. He's long off the tee. He's great with his irons. He's creative around the greens, and he's putting the lights out this season. I want all the Phil Mickelson at Shinnecock Hills as he completes the career Grand Slam.
Kenny Kim.
My pick to win the U.S. Open is Justin Thomas. His big issue in the past was the big number, but he's gotten over that, and we don't see those mistakes from him now like we did in the past. You can see with his 2nd in bogey avoidance in the last 50 rounds in the field that this is true. Him winning at the 2 toughest courses on tour this year makes me believe he's ready for the challenge that awaits him at Shinnecock, and he won't bat an eye over how difficult the course is.
The NYC punter himself, Russell Whalen.
I've got Brooks Koepka winning the U.S. Open as a repeat champion, which is something that's happened many times in the storied history of the U.S. Open. It's a ringers tournament, and Brooks was basically born and bred to win this thing and win it multiple times. So I've got him on from 45 to 40, 35, and 30 to 1 to take it down. And I think he's one of the few guys that can do it. Again, the worst kept secret on Twitter. Good luck, guys.
Toe, Tag, and Tambo been hot this year. From FantasyGuruElite.com.
My main man, Ricky Fowler. Coming off a hot Masters where he came in 2nd. He put it all together, showed that he had it down the stretch, and even finished strong on Sunday going into 18, putting all the pressure back on Patrick Reed. He said after the round he's ready to win a major, and I believe he is. And he said Shinnecock is one of his favorite courses in America. So while many people think Carnoustie the spot for him, I think we could actually see Ricky go back-to-back and take down the U.S. Open, followed by the Open.
Joshua Perry from the Action Network.
I'm going with Justin Thomas to win the U.S. Open. He's got pretty much everything I'm looking for here. He's got the length off the tee. He's got the major championship pedigree with that PGA championship win and the final pairing last year at the U.S. Open. He was a target of mine for parlays earlier in the year, and we got him worked up to 36 to 1. So Justin Thomas is my pick to win the U.S. Open.
Reed Fowler from DK Live.
My pick is Jason Day. Look, I know he's not striking it like we're used to of late, but guess what, people? He's still winning. 2 victories already this season and an absolute powerhouse when it comes to playing well in the majors. Outside of the missed cut last season, Day hasn't finished outside the top 10 over the past 5 years at this major. Over the last 24 rounds, he's okay with strokes gained tee to green, but is elite by the greens, ranking 2nd in scrambling, 2nd in strokes gained putting, and 1st in bogey avoidance. This is your year to add the U.S. Open to your trophy room.
James Miles.
Dustin Johnson. The former world #1 has been playing consistent all year long. Shinnecock is reminiscent of Oakmont where he won in 2016, and his game is tailor-made for the U.S. Open setup. His distance is going to allow him to take advantage of some of the dog legs around here and be aggressive where others might not be able to. His approach game is red hot right now. Dustin Johnson gets it done this week.
Jeff Ulrich.
Rather than just tell you who's going to win the 2018 U.S. Open, Pat, I thought I'd draw you a picture of what's going to happen on Sunday. We got the whole Jason Day family there, Dash, Lucy, Ellie. They're going to be running onto the green to congratulate Jason Day on his second major championship. Look, Jason Day, 5 top 10s and 7 U.S. Open starts, 2 runner-up finishes already. First in strokes gained putting, third in strokes gained around the green, 14th strokes gained off the tee. He's winning without his A game. I think he's going to put it all together at Shinnecock Hills this week. I really do like Jason Day, and I think he's going to win the 2018 U.S. Open.
Skylar Hoke, best known on Twitter as @GolfGurus.
Our winner pick for the 2018 U.S. Open is Tommy Fleetwood. After a breakout performance at Erin Hills, Tommy has continued to cement himself as one of the world's most elite ball strikers. Fleetwood is no stranger to success on long and links tracks. In addition to his trending U.S. Open finishes, he is 2-time defending champ in Abu Dhabi, where the course plays well over 7,500 yards. At the Players, Tommy gained the third most strokes approach of his PGA career, then continued success overseas, flashing top 10 tee to green performances at Wentworth and the Italian Open. Undervalued at 50-1 outright and $8,100 on DraftKings, Tommy Fleetwood is our choice to win the 2018 U.S. Open.
Terrace Petra from FantasyGolfInsider.com and Fantasy Guru Elite.
My pick to win this year's U.S. Open is a strong tee to green player, an excellent ball striker, a fire-hot putter at times, a great sand player. He's good in the wind and he's good on tough courses. And that player is none other than Ricky Fowler.
Rick Gaiman.
My pick to win is none other than Jon Rahm. He's elite off the tee and certainly long enough to tame Shinnecock. His putter can get red hot in a moment's notice, and he's shown us that he can win at tough tracks. Think Torrey Pines. His last major start resulted in a 4th place finish at the Masters, and he seems primed and ready to win his first major.
DailyFantasySportsRanking.com's Chris Durrell.
My pick for the U.S. Open this year is Justin Thomas. He's 15th in strokes gained off the tee, 6th in strokes gained approach, 1st in proximity from the fairway. Very good putter, 36th in strokes gained putting this year. He's got the distance to attack this course, and he has gotten better at U.S. Opens each and every year. He was cut in 2014, T32 in 2016, T9 in 2017, and he's going to win it this year.
Chris Hollander from FantasyNational.com.
My pick to win the 2018 U.S. Open is Tommy Fleetwood. I chose Tommy because I really like his history in the U.S. Open. I know it's not played at the same course every single year, but he showed that he can do really well in very tough conditions. His strokes gained approach and off the tee have been really solid over the past few years. The only concern is his strokes gained putting, and I think he can kind of figure that out at the Open.
Fanvice.com and recent winner of $100K in the Dogwag contest, Andrew Barron.
Pat, I have some opinions, one of which is that Jon Rahm can and likely will win the U.S. Open this year. Very, very long. People are not going to be clubbing down here, so he can really take advantage of that length. Relatively straight for how long he is. Also, that should mitigate some of his issues with the irons that he's had in the past. And then we have really fast greens, and he can just get nuke on them. We've seen it at Augusta in the past, at the U.S. Opens in the past. It's really just a good setup for him. You're going to have to putt well if you want to take it home. So give me Jon Rahm.
One and done master and of GupsCorner.com, Josh Burkett.
Jason Day. Throw out last year's miscut, which came at the height of his mother's battle with cancer, and we're looking at a guy who's finished in the top 10 in 5 of his previous 6 appearances. First in strokes gained putting, and a top 15 performance in strokes gained off the tee, Day owns the perfect combination of power and putting prowess that it takes to bring home the year's second major.
From bogey-free DFS, Matt Jones.
I'm going to go out on a limb and pick Tony Finau. He's outside of the top 30 in salary this week, but he has scored the 6th most DraftKings points over his past 24 rounds heading into the FedEx St. Jude, and to me the guy is course proof. Since the beginning of 2017, he's made 40 starts. In that time, he's made 35 cuts, which includes 12 top 10s. Maybe guys in the 10K range have a better shot, but I'm putting my money on Finau to get his first major win at Shinnecock this year.
And finally, Pat Perry from the Tour Junkies podcast.
All right, Pat. Well, my pick to win is going to be Justin Rose. I love him coming in this week at Shinnecock, just in great recent form. And you know what? He just has that all-around game, and that's what you see typically at a U.S. Open. You got to have everything clicking on all cylinders, and Justin Rose has that. And you know what? He's got the experience with winning a U.S. Open before on a very tough course at Marion. So my pick is going to be Justin Rose.
And that'll do it on the mega U.S. Open DraftKings Millionaire Maker picks and preview. I'd like to thank all my guests for contributing and you for powering through all of this. I'll have updated shows every day of the week for the tournament, and you can find my columns up on dkplaybook.com. Plus, find my betting cheat sheet Wednesday afternoon on my Facebook page, facebook.com/thepme. Remember to give the episode a like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, and enter those contests I talked about at the top for some DK bucks and a fantasynational.com yearly membership. It's worth it, especially like the 10 seconds it takes you to do it. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, Insta, and Facebook at the PME. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever else you can download podcasts. The Pat Mayo Experience, it will be there. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck with the U.S. Open. Someone go win $1 million, all right? I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!